Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 15 of What If Naruto was the Prince of Olympus. This is the last part of this What If. Hope you guys enjoyed this What If series. If you guys enjoyed this What If, comment down below and let me know. Check out my new videos of My Hero Academia What Ifs in my second channel, and give it some love as well. Link is in the description. And go ahead and check out other What Ifs in the channel. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So let's start this video. Caitlyn Sharp regained her consciousness by the feeling of cold breath breathed against her skin. Her eyes then snapped open in shock as she remembered what happened to her. Fear soon took over her mind as she looked around and saw a dark-looking room, with her being hanged on the ceiling with both hands tied above her head by golden chains. What? Caitlyn stuttered in fear. She was captured and held in a place she didn't know where. Help. She shouted as loud as she could, hoping that someone could help her, but Caitlyn knew that she was trying in vain. No one can hear you here, little girl, Caitlyn gasped when the taxi driver, the one who captured her, stepped out of a shadow with an evil smirk on his face, his full of muscles from completely towering Caitlyn. This special room was magical, not even Hestia would be able to find Caitlyn here. You? Caitlyn gasped in shock, because she finally got a good look at his face. He was the same man who sneaked into her bus, and tried to force himself on her, if not for Naruto, who appeared in time, to save her before this man could do anything. Who are you? What do you want with me? She asked, trying to put on a brave face. Oh, I want to do everything with you, honey, the man said lecherously, while ogling Caitlyn's body. Last time, I got such a great opportunity and you could have one of the best times of your life, if not for that Whiskers punk, he spat with venom in his voice. His name is Naruto. Caitlyn shouted angrily, and he is probably searching for me now, she said with a strong voice. Not because she tried to make this man worry about the one who kicked him several feet out of a window, because she knew that Naruto was out there looking for her, and would come to save her in any second. Oh, I know he is coming, the man said, as if he could read her mind, because I am waiting for little brother after all. What? Caitlyn said in shock. You're... Oh, he didn't tell you, did he? Ares chuckled. Yes girl, I'm Naruto's older brother, he said with a smirk, before removing his sunglasses, revealing his flame-filled eye sockets. I'm Ares, the Olympian's god of war. Caitlyn gasped in shock, her eyes as white as a dinner plate, staring at his flames-filled eyes. This man, he was a god, she didn't know why, but she couldn't deny the truth behind his words. He was Ares. Now everything was clear. Then, Naruto, the so-called Prince of Olympus, Ares laughed mockingly, as if, that wee punk is nothing but an insect under my feet, like any of you mortal. He then reached his hands out, and tore open a large part of her shirt, as well as her skirt. Caitlyn cried out in fear as she was more or less completely exposed to this man. He said I could use you against him, and shouldn't ruin that pretty face of yours, but he didn't say I cannot have some fun with you, Ares said, licking his lips, and began to remove his pants. You should feel honor, because you will bear a child of a god. No, please don't. Caitlyn shouted, trying to get away, but the chains were holding her back. She was outright crying now, when his pants finally dropped to his feet. Naruto, she cried in her head. She closed her eyes as tight as she could and braced herself. Tear never stopped flowing down her cheeks. She waited, and waited. Motherfucker. Caitlyn heard Ares curse out angrily, and couldn't help but open her eyes. Ares was standing with his cock in his hand, trying to get it hard by stroking it rapidly. However, no matter how he tried, his member was still as limp as jelly. That bitch, Ares cried out. One of Aphrodite's curses, no doubt about it. Caitlyn looked at him pathetically before a slight smirk spread out on her face. Are you sure you are Naruto's brother? Caitlyn taunted, because as far as I can tell, his dick is bigger and longer than you, and definitely not a limp thick, not to mention he is totally more handsome. She humiliated him. What did you just say? Ares roared, I'm a god. That mortal got nothing like me. Yes, I said it, limp dick. Caitlyn shouted back and was slapped across the face. The girl didn't cry this time. Instead she spit blood out of her mouth and looked at Ares, a massive bruise on her cheek. Not so confident now, aren't we? She asked mockingly. Fuck this. Ares roared and grabbed Caitlyn's head, pulling her down near his cock. I will just use your fucking mouth then. However, before Caitlyn's face could get anywhere near his cock, a pink heart suddenly appeared around his cock, and in a flash, boom, something exploded in a pink smoke, sending Ares across the room, before landing on the ground roughly. Damn you, Aphrodite. Caitlyn heard Ares cried out painfully in shock, while holding his crotch, golden blood flowing out between his fingers. Caitlyn busted out in laughter when she saw Ares' pathetic form. At least, Caitlyn believed that the worst would never happen to her now. Naruto, please come quickly, she prayed in her head. Later that day, Caitlyn. Naruto called out loudly, while slamming his hand against the door of her apartment. Caitlyn, are you in there? Now that he was worried. Since this morning, he couldn't contact her at all, which was something very abnormal. Naruto started to get suspicious when he got no reply from her after sending her multi-texts, which Caitlyn always replied almost immediately. He grew even more worried when Caitlyn didn't answer his call. So immediately, Naruto flashed to the outside of her apartment, where he put a hairshin mark in case he wanted to get to her apartment as quickly as he could. Naruto had been standing in front of the door of her apartment for 5 minutes now, and it looked like Caitlyn wasn't here. "Where are you, Kate?" Naruto asked worriedly and was about to go into Senimoto to search for her when suddenly, he heard Hesha's voice inside of his head. "Naruto, the quest is in trouble," the goddess of the heart said with a worried tone. "They need you now." "What?" Naruto asked. "What is happening, auntie?" "Very good timing indeed," Naruto thought sarcastically. "Ares is attacking them." He got the Master Bolt and the Helm of Darkness with him as well. Naruto widened his eyes in shock. "Bastard," he muttered. "Inform the Olympians, auntie, tell them everything." "I will, now go, Naruto." With that, Naruto disappeared in a flash of yellow, praying that his girlfriend would still alright after he got back from beating the hell out of Ares. The 6-foot wall of water, guided by Percy Jackson the son of Poseidon, smashed Ares full in the face, leaving him cursing and sputtering with a mouth full of seaweed. Percy took a leap, before landing behind him with a splash and fainted toward his head. Ares turned around in time to raise his sword, but this time he was disoriented. He didn't anticipate the trick. Percy changed direction, lunged to the side, and stabbed Riptide straight down into the water, sending the point through the god's heel. The god of war roared out painfully, making the sea blasted back away from Ares, leaving a wet circle of sand 50 feet wide. The expression on his face was beyond hatred. It was pain, shock, complete disbelief that he'd been wounded by a mere demigod. It was as humiliated as getting wounded from Naruto Uzumaki. Ares limped toward Percy, muttering in ancient Greek curses. And Percy raised his sword, prepared for him. "You?" But he stopped suddenly, when the boy he hated the most in the world appeared next to Annabeth in a flash of yellow, glaring at him. "Naruto," Annabeth gasped and released a sigh of relief. "You finally came." While Percy was handling the situation quite better than she thought, the daughter of wisdom knew that even the three of them put together wouldn't be able to stand a chance against a god, so her only option was calling for Naruto for help. "Oh yeah, I got a score to settle with this guy," Naruto said, grinning evilly. "Percy, step back," he ordered loudly, and the son of Poseidon wishfully backed off, running back to stand with his friends. "Naruto, he is. I know he is keeping the lightning bolt." Percy, Naruto raised his hand to stop him, as well as the Helm of Darkness. "You know?" Annabeth asked in shock. "How?" "Long story." Naruto cracked his fist and stepped forward, pulling a Nornal and a Tri-Prongs kunai out of his dimension pocket. "I will explain later." Naruto stopped when he was 20 feet away from Ares, who pulled out a large square of ambrosia and threw it into his mouth. The food of the gods immediately healed the wound at his heel and replenished his strength. "So Ares, who is the lightning thief?" Naruto asked with a smirk. "Even if you're stupid, I doubt that you're stupid enough to break a few ancient laws, just to start a war between our family." "None of your damn business, punk," Ares roared, making Naruto raise an eyebrow in amusement. The god of war appeared to be angrier than usual, which may be because Percy managed to wound him. "So, I guess you probably won't hang those godly weapons out without getting your ass kicked now." Naruto raised his hand, gripping his kunais tightly. He needed to finish this fast, so that he could return to find his girlfriend. Behind him, the trio wisely backed off, and found a clearing to hide behind. They all could feel a massive fight coming, unlike anything they had seen before in their life. "I will shut that fucking mouth of your punk," Ares scolded, but then a smirk made it to his face. "But before we start this, how about I introduce you to a friend of mine?" And he snapped his fingers. In a flash of red, Naruto's eyes widened in horror when Caitlyn appeared with her arms raised above her head, her wrists tied together by golden chain. Her usual well-taken hair was completely ruined, her face covered in bruise and cut, clothes torn and destroyed, revealing multi-cuts and scratches, even dark bruises big as a fist. Caitlyn was unconscious, with red blood running down the corner of her mouth. "Caitlyn," Naruto shouted with his voice full of anger and hatred. He then turned to Ares. "You bastard." He was about to charge at him with the intent to kill, when suddenly a massive boar appeared behind her. "If I were you, I wouldn't do anything stupid," Ares said with an evil smirk. "Damn you," Naruto gritted his teeth in anger. He knew about that dangerous boar. It was mentioned in Greek mythology multi-times before as Ares' sacred animal, which could instantly kill any human being, just by crashing into them. "So, how should we do this?" Ares asked and rushed forward with his sword, raised above his head. He then struck it down his younger brother's head, but Naruto already raised his own weapon to block Ares' sword. The Prince of Olympus gritted his teeth in anger. His attention was on Caitlyn. Ares wasn't very smart, or a good fighter, but he was reckless, and of course a mindless warrior. He could do anything to archive his victory. Naruto had to back down to the defensive line, while thinking the best way to save his Caitlyn. He needed to make sure Caitlyn is okay, before killing Ares for what he did to her. You drop your guard, little brother, Ares said evilly and punched Naruto on his face with his other free hand, so strong that it created a shockwave when his fist came into contact with Naruto's cheek. Naruto bit the inside of his mouth to stop the groan of pain. He wasn't in Senimoto, so basically a punch from a brutal god like Ares hurt it a lot. I can't believe a weak punk like you managed to defeat me. 2 times Ares cried and slammed the flat side of his sword down Naruto's head, who is the superior one now, huh? He laughed and kicked Naruto on his chin, sending the blonde across the field. Before Naruto could get up, Ares appeared above him, and stabbed his sword down Naruto's left shoulder, making him cry out in pain as the sword completely passed through his body. His cry of pain soon woke Caitlyn up, as she looked around in shock, nearly cried out in fear, when she saw a gigantic boar standing next to her. Caitlyn's eyes then landed on Naruto, and this time she cried out in horror when she saw her boyfriend on the ground with a sword stabbed through his shoulder, pinning him down to the ground. Naruto. She cried out with tears flowing down to her cheeks. With her splitted lips it was actually hard to say anything, but she didn't care in the slightest. Please stop, please don't hurt him, she cried. Naruto cried out in pain, when Ares twisted the sword around very slowly, grinning in satisfaction. Ha ha ha. Not so confident now, aren't you? Ares laughed loudly, summoning another sword and stabbing it down Naruto's other shoulder. He then lowered his body down and grabbed onto Naruto's spiky hair, pulling his head back roughly. Any last words for your girlfriend before I kill you? Naruto. Caitlyn sobbed, looking at Naruto with tears-filled eyes. Hey, it's alright, Kate. Naruto said with a weak grin. Everything is going to be alright, I promise. He smiled softly at her. Believe in me, my love, Caitlyn. Well, crying couldn't help, but not her head. Enough of this. Ares shouted and summoned the third sword, bringing it down Naruto's head. Time seemed to slow down as Naruto prepared for his death. But in a matter of seconds, his eyes widened when he saw a flash of pink appeared above the boar, with the familiar scent of incredible strong perfume rushed into his nose out of nowhere. Naruto couldn't help but grin. He trained her well. When the sword was just millimeters from the back of Naruto's head, his body suddenly exploded in power as Kurama's chakra wrapped around his form. The explosion of power was so powerful that Ares and his swords were sent away from Naruto's body. Naruto shot to his feet. He didn't need to turn around to know Aphrodite just arrived with a pink Rasengan in her hand, twisting around in the air before slamming the swirling orb down the boar head. Rasengan. The goddess of love cried out as she grinded the orb of power down the boar's head, giving the animal a free trip to Tartarus, in the form of a storm of golden dust. You have my gratitude, Aphrodite, Naruto said gratefully, feeling the wounds on his shoulders healed up with the help of his partner. Don't thank me, it was your aunt, Hestia. Aphrodite smiled and turned to Caitlyn. Hey girl, she said cheerily, and removed the chain around her hand. Who are you? Caitlyn asked quietly, but she could recognize her by the unmatchable beauty. She was then released from the binding magic and fell down and was caught by Aphrodite. I'm Aphrodite, Caitlyn gasped in shock. Your boyfriend's student Aphrodite, then winked to Caitlyn before turning to Naruto. The council know about Ares' treason action now, Naruto. His fate is now in your hand, you to decide. I understand, Naruto nodded emotionlessly, glaring hatefully at Ares. Take the 2 weapons and the quest out of here. Close your eyes, Caitlyn, Aphrodite said to the girl, and she wishfully obeyed. In a flash of pink, the golden-haired woman, Ares' bike and the quest disappeared. Damn. But Ares could never finish his curse, because Naruto appeared in front of him with the Rasengan in hand, and slammed it into Ares' chest. Killing you right now will be too mercy. Naruto roared as he grinded the orb against Ares' upper body, tearing through his flesh and muscles. I will make you feel the same pain you did to Caitlyn. Naruto roared and sent Ares away in a massive tornado, while crying out in pain. In a flash, Naruto disappeared and reappeared behind Ares' flying body with hatred planted on his face. However, before Naruto could attack, Ares unleashed his divine form. His body became a mass of muscles, standing at the height of 6'11". He was wearing the blood-red battle outfit of the ancient Sparta warrior, with a helmet covered his face, leaving nothing but his flaming eyes visible. He was holding a golden sword in his hand, as well as a celestial bronze shield on the other. His form clearly screamed power. I will show you the pain, punk. Godly form. Ares raised his golden spear to attack Naruto. However, he didn't expect a black orb appeared beside Naruto, and the blonde pulled out a long black rod from it, raising the rod to block Ares' sword. Much to his shock, when Naruto's weapon came in contact with his much bigger and sharper weapon, it broke through the sword like it was just mere dirt. His golden sword then crumbled into nothingness. Naruto raised his foot and kicked Ares hard in the chest, sending him away toward the sea in a powerful shockwave, and the god of war disappeared from sight in 1 second. Ares looked down and his eyes widened in horror when he saw a massive gash on his chest, where Naruto kicked him. The god tried to regain his balance, but he could only cry out in pain, when itcher poured out from his wound. Ares landed roughly onto the ground, dashing on the ground several times before finally stopped. He just sent Ares across the sea, to the nearest island which was 9 miles with only 1 kick. Damn, I totally forgot how strong I am in this form, Naruto muttered to himself and shot into the air, flying toward the island. His chakra cloak now turned into a light-colored coat with a dark-colored bodysuit. Underneath that covered his torso, reached down his arms to the knuckles, and down his legs, stopping just above his sandals, which also changed color. It also had a light-colored circle where his seal was placed, as well as golden Nagatama markings around his collar. The coat had the typical markings of the Six Paths Senjutsu. A Rinnegan above 9 Nagatama on its back and lastly 9 Gudadama floating behind his back. No holding back, he heard Kurama ask inside of his mindscape. He will pay was all his reply. Naruto lowered himself down to the ground behind Ares, who was shoving down mouthful after mouthful of ambrosia, and drank as much as nectar as he could, trying to heal the massive wound on his chest as fast as possible. Not so tough now, aren't you? Naruto used the same taunt Ares used to mock him, the 9 Gudadama floating behind his back. You think you're powerful? Ares asked hatefully, standing up with his hand gripping a spear tightly. You are just a mere mortal, a mere insect under my feet. He charged at Naruto. To think someone like you is a god, Naruto muttered before easily dodged his attack before sending a Gudadama toward his left arm, completely destroyed it to nothingness. Da! Ares shouted when he saw his entire left hand turned into dust. Like I said, Naruto said coldly, killing you right now will be to mercy. He grabbed Ares' shield and yanked it from the god's hand, before slamming it into his face, breaking his nose as well as the front part of his skull. Please, Ares muttered, but it felt into dead ears. Shut up. Naruto roared and punched him hard in the face, creating another hand to grab him, stopping Ares from being sent flying away. Did you stop when she begged you? You sorry excuse for God. He punched Ares multi-times, harder and harder until the whole island shook with violent powerful shockwaves, which also created wave after wave on the ocean. Naruto threw Ares down to the ground and jumped on him, continuing the beating like a madman. He punched, and punched, and punched his ichor-coated fists aimed at Ares' face. The only things in his mind right now was rage, and a beaten Caitlyn. Ares' godly bone was the only thing that was keeping him alive, but it was just barely. Finally, after a minute of nothing but beating, Naruto stood up while breathing hard with his orange eyes, looking down at Ares' pathetic form. Please kill me, he heard Ares muttered weakly. He was barely alive now. Naruto willed a Gudadama into his open palm. But at the last moment, Naruto decided against it. This god would never earn the honor of getting killed by his most powerful technique. Naruto returned the Gudadama back to his position behind his back and turned around, walking away while sending a silent prayer to his father. Remember this day, Ares, because when you return, I will kill you again, Naruto said, and disappeared in a flash of yellow, just as a massive bolt shot out from the sky and struck Ares, leaving nothing but a pile of golden dust where he used to be. Olympus. Naruto reappeared inside the throne room of Olympus, with his features returned to normal. Naruto nodded his head to his father, who was holding the master bolt in his hand. Zeus only looked at Naruto with a sad expression on his face. He then turned to Hera, who was sobbing quietly with her face buried into her hands. Mom, Naruto muttered quietly. He knew that his mother loved her family more than anything in the world. Seeing their son try to kill each other before one of them killed by his own father would be the most painful thing a mother would have to come through. Naruto walked up to her and wrapped his arms around Hera's shoulders, smiling sadly at her. I'm sorry, Mom, he muttered. No, you did the right thing, Naruto. Hera said through sobs. This family wouldn't be the same again without the hard decision. She wrapped her arms around Naruto, and the blonde let her mother cry on his shoulder. He turned to Hestia, who was at her usual spot beside the main hearth, and instead of poking the fire rod into the fire like usual, the kindest goddess was staring into the fire with a sadness in her eyes, while hugging her knees close to her chest. She was, after all, the goddess of family. Naruto was heading to Apollo's palace, the place Naruto believed Aphrodite took her to after teleporting her and everyone away from the battlefield. He knew that Caitlyn's condition was a piece of cake to the god of medic, but he still wanted to make sure that Caitlyn would be alright. The two Olympians he was thinking about was standing in front of Apollo's palace, talking to each other, though Aphrodite got the expression of displeasure on her face. Come on, Dite, one day, Apollo said with both of his hands clapped together in front of his chest. Not interest, Apollo, not anymore, the goddess of love replied blankly, before turning to the side when she heard footstep. Her eyes widened and a smile spread out on her face when she saw Naruto. Naruto. Hey Aphrodite, he smiled to his student before grinning to Apollo. You too, Apollo. Yo Naruto, I heard what happened with you, and Ares, Apollo said with a nervous smile on his face. Make sure to remind me to never get on your bad side. Will you? The information about Ares was spreading across the mountain of gods like fire on hay. All around the world all wars between nations stopped, and people started to reunite with each other with open arms. I will. Naruto nodded his head with a small smile. How is she? I cure all the wounds, she only needs to get a good rest now. Naruto nodded his head. Thank you, Apollo. Remind me to repay you later, alright? The sun god grinned brightly. Sure, Apollo said before opening the door for him. You want to meet her? I'm not sure. Go ahead, Aphrodite encouraged him with a smile. After everything that happened, she will need you at her side. Okay then, Naruto walked into Apollo's palace, but not before turning to Aphrodite. See you later, Aphrodite. And he closed the doors behind him. And you okay with that? Apollo asked. I thought you're after Naruto. Of course, I'm not okay with that, but I don't want to see him to be unhappy either. Aphrodite shook her head before walking away. Hey, Naruto whispered softly, after closing the door behind him, looking at Caitlyn who was lying on the bed at the middle of the room with the blanket covered her body. All of the bruises and cuts on her face had disappeared, and Naruto doubted that the rest of her body wasn't the same, considering that Apollo was the best healer in the world. Hey, there was a hint of tiredness in her voice, when Caitlyn turned to him and greeted softly. Naruto walked to her, and took off his shoes, climbing onto the bed and sat down next to Caitlyn. How do you feel? Naruto asked softly, using his fingers to move a few strands of her blonde hair away from her face. I feel strange, Caitlyn said with a small smile. I'm on Mount Olympus, inside Lord Apollo's place. I was rescued by the goddess of love herself, after finding out that my boyfriend is the son of the king and queen of Olympus, Lord Zeus and Lady Hera. It is kind of hard to take in, I suppose, Naruto chuckled. No, it all makes sense now, Caitlyn said softly. Now I know why you're so interested in Greek mythology. Your fighting skills, everything. She wanted to mention her nightmares as well, but decided against it because she didn't want Naruto to get more worried about her. It's because you're the Prince of Olympus. I'm not sure if that title suit me at all. Naruto smiled before a frown made it to his face. Kate, Ares, my brother, he didn't do anything to you, did he? He tried, but something about Lady Aphrodite cursing him stopped him from doing so. Caitlyn chuckled at the memories. He tried to force himself on me, and the next thing that happened, his crotch exploded. For real? Naruto asked while cracking in laughter. Now he would need to repay Aphrodite for everything she had done to help him. Naruto, Caitlyn then turned back to look at the ceiling, and asked with a small tone, Lady Aphrodite, she loves you, doesn't she? Caitlyn. I can see it in her eyes, the way she talked with you, Caitlyn said with a small tone. Lady Aphrodite, the most beautiful goddess as well as love herself, who am I to try to compare with her? But you're still the girl I love, Kate, Naruto said with a smile, lowering his head down to plant a soft kiss on his girlfriend's forehead. Don't worry about it, I promise to never leave you. Not like that, Naruto, Caitlyn said, turning to him again. I wasn't like I felt jealous of Aphrodite or anything, Naruto, quite opposite actually. The way she looked at you, she talked about you, as if she knew that you're the one who is mean to her. Aphrodite is the goddess of love, Naruto, she is love. She had been denied it from the day she stepped on Olympus, and do you think that she will be okay if her true love rejects her too? But I love you, Kate. Don't say it like that, Caitlyn smiled, putting a hand on his cheek. I don't know why, even if I barely know her, I feel a strange connection with Lady Aphrodite. Maybe it was because we both love the same man, she smiled, or maybe because we both want you to feel happy. Don't reject her, Naruto. Naruto released a long sigh. What about you, Kate? Oh, I would have to try harder then. I was literally outclassed by Lady Aphrodite in everything. Caitlyn said teasingly. It was mentioned in Greek mythology that gods could have multi-affairs, right? Hey, that is not something to joke about, Naruto whined playfully, making Caitlyn giggle. Naruto laid his body down next to his girlfriend, letting Caitlyn snuggle to his body as close as she could with her arms wrapped around his chest. That night. Can I come in? Naruto poked his head into the open doors of Aphrodite Palace, asking with a smile on his face. Oh, come in, Naruto, I'm dying to see you here. A massive smile spread out on Aphrodite's face as she ran to the door, and opened it for him. Naruto stepped in and brought up the boxes he was holding in his hands with a foxy grin. Chocolate and champagne. Holy Zeus. Aphrodite gasped in shock, grabbing the chocolate box that greatly resembled a handsome book, more like an encyclopedia. Is this Debov and Gallus' liver? Naruto grinned before asking, do I spell it right? Of course, and 2 years ago you didn't even know this world's best sweet. Aphrodite giggled. How's Caitlyn? She is sleeping now. I moved her to my mother's palace to make sure Apollo won't try anything funny. Fair enough. Aphrodite's expression then became seductive, as she leaned closer to his body. So, you're here to give me the kiss I am waiting for, with your girlfriend literally 3 blocks away from us. Naruto gulped slightly. After everything he went through with Aphrodite, who became an amazing fighter and actually came to help him save Caitlyn, he totally forgot who was this woman, and what she was truly capable of, especially after the talk with Caitlyn. Naruto now became more comfortable around Aphrodite. And not to mention the pink kippah she was wearing did nothing to hide her amazing figure. It was drawing a lot of attention toward her large breasts, by opening widely at the front, the kippah also barely reaching down her mid-thighs, with the slit so high that the waistline of her skimpy thong was visible. How naughty of you, Aphrodite flicked his nose and smiled seductively. I haven't. Thank you for coming to save Caitlyn. Naruto spoke up loudly, wanting to change the topic between them, and buy him a few more seconds. So thank you. I didn't know what would happen if you didn't come. Again, it is your aunt, not me. Aphrodite smiled at him, grabbing the box of champagne from his hand, and but both chocolate and wine on the nearest table, before grabbing his hand. So, clearly, he didn't have much time. Where do you want it? Aphrodite asked hopefully. Here. On the chair. Or on the bed. I think we will both comfortable if we sat down on your bed, Naruto said wisely, and he was immediately pulled toward the place by Aphrodite. With a roughly pushed, Aphrodite pushed Naruto down the bed and climbed onto his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck, and brought her body as close as possible to him, pressing her breast against his chest. Remember, one kiss, no funny business, Naruto pointed out clearly. Oh, one kiss is enough, Naruto. Aphrodite was a little nervous too, but she managed to put on a brave face, before pressing her lips against his. All thoughts washed away from Naruto's mind the moment Aphrodite placed her mouth over his. For a moment, all he could do was enjoying the feel of her incredible soft lips as they pressed against his. His eyes shot wide open in shock when a strange feeling suddenly appeared inside of his heart. It felt so right, even after who knew how many times he kissed Caitlyn. The ones he shared with his girlfriend got nothing on what he was sharing with the goddess of love. It was just a simple kiss, lips to lips, mouth to mouth, and nothing sexual between them, and yet Naruto couldn't help but get lost in it. He fell onto his back, taking Aphrodite with him as they continued to kiss. Then it happened. Emotions. All kinds of positive emotions and thoughts bombarded into his mind. How happy it was to finally find your true love. How pleasant it felt to be kissing by your true love. How much he loved his true love. It took him several moments to realize that these were not his thoughts. They were the thoughts of the woman who was currently kissing him. It's you. Aphrodite suddenly pulled back and said with the happiest smile he had ever seen on her face. It's you, Naruto. Crystal-like tears fell out from her eyes as she looked at him with nothing but love. He was lost for words. Aphrodite was right, she was right from the beginning. They were destined to be with each other. Love me, the goddess whispered and lowered her lips down Naruto's lips again. This time she held nothing back and kissed his as much love as she could give. The clothes were removed faster than even their eyes could follow. So, nothing happened last night? Caitlyn asked, finally being able to get on her feet again. She was walking beside Naruto as he was giving her a tour around Olympus. Nothing at all, he said with a weak smile. You sure? Because as far as I can tell from the way Lady Aphrodite was walking this morning, something definitely happened. His girlfriend glared slightly at him. Please don't be angry at me. Naruto immediately got down to his knees in front of her, and wrapped his arms around her waist. Hey, knock it off, people are staring. Caitlyn said while looking around. Of course, I'm not angry with you. Really? Yes, because I'm absolutely mad at you. She slapped him across the face and walked away. Hey Kate, wait, Kate, I can explain. Naruto quickly followed behind her, giving the best explanations he could think of in order to calm his girlfriend down. The two soon arrived at the throne room and Naruto, as a gentleman opened the door for his girlfriend who huffed and walked in without looking at him. However, before Naruto could introduce his parent to Caitlyn, the heavy atmosphere inside the throne room suddenly caught his attention. Dad, what's wrong? Naruto asked the kind of Olympus, who was standing beside three unfamiliar old women. Naruto, I think we have a problem. What do you mean we have a? Naruto. But he didn't get to finish his question, because a certain goddess walked into the throne room, and immediately threw herself at him, smashing her enormous boobs onto the backside of his head with her arms wrapped tightly around it, squealing out like a mad fangirl. Of course, this made the girl standing next to him cross her arms together and glare at him. Hey, Aphrodite, Naruto chuckled nervously as the goddess leaned her head against the top of his head, wearing a dazing smile on her face. Ahem, excuse me, Caitlyn cleared her throat loudly. I am standing. Caitlyn, you're alright. Aphrodite immediately let go of Naruto, and jumped down to stand in front of Caitlyn, grabbing the young woman's hands, while smiling at her. I'm so glad. Haha, thank you, Lady Aphrodite. Caitlyn laughed nervously, kind of surprised by this friendliness from one of the most dangerous goddesses on Olympus, who is also in love with the same man she was in love with. Naruto returned his attention back to his father and spoke up. Dad. Naruto, Zeus said with a somewhat nervous tone, which was something you could see every day, with his hands motioning to the three old women standing next to him. These are the fates. Immediately the cheerful atmosphere Aphrodite brought into the throne room was put down, and replaced with a rather heavy one, when the three women turned around to face Naruto. The fates, the ones who indirectly made his life a living hell, the ones who didn't allow him to be with his parents. Clotho, the one who spins the thread of life. Lachesis, she who draws the lots and determines how long one lives, by measuring the thread of life. And the Tropos, the inevitable, she who chose how someone dies, by cutting the thread of life with her shears. These three women are the most powerful beings in the world, only after the creator of the universe Chaos. In the presence of the one who could decide when you're dead, instead of cowering in fear, or at least acting a little nervously, Naruto only glared at them with a small smirk on his face. He glanced to the side and saw Aphrodite standing next to him, with Vinculum in her hand. Caitlin was standing behind the both of them with fear planted on her face. He didn't know what happened, but clearly, she saw something terrible when she looked at the three women. "Naruto Uzumaki," Lachesis said with a deep, calm tone, "you caused us so much trouble." "Oh, do tell," Naruto requested calmly. "Naruto, be a little more respectful," Zeus warned. "No dad, you know clearly that these three are the reason why you had to live in guilty, mom in sadness and I in loneliness for 17 years. 17 years Dad," Naruto said. A thin blue aura flared around him. "Should I afraid to respect them?" "No." A strong word for such a young man, a mortal no less, Atropos stated calmly, before glancing to Aphrodite. "I see that you finally found your destiny one, goddess." Aphrodite glared became hardened, and Naruto could feel anger swelled within her. Of course, Aphrodite would feel angry at them. If they didn't steal away her power of detecting her true love, Aphrodite wouldn't have to live scornful from the other for nearly 3,000 years. "Naruto, Ares' death is making the world go into a new orbit." Zeus spoke up. "He is the god of war. Without him, there is no war." "Well, isn't that a good thing?" Naruto asked. "You don't understand, do you, Naruto Uzumaki?" Clotho spoke up. "Humans have been killing each other for a long time. Humans, they seem to be hardwired towards violence. Evolution probably ensured that all the non-violent humans did not systematically survive to reproduce. Besides the tendency to violence, humans naturally evolved a desire to protect kin, and were expected to fight to protect them. Kin developed into tribes, and then villages, and then eventually nations. For most of human history, fighting consisted of raiding for resources, and there are two that fundamentally mattered: food and sex. Populations can't grow without nourishment and reproduction." Naruto tilted his head to the side with a question mark on his head. "It means that without war, a human can't reproduce themselves and soon they will all die." Everyone turned around and saw Artemis walking toward them with a calm expression on her face. "Hello father, ladies fates," she greeted the king of the gods and the fates respectfully. "Oh yeah, why didn't you say so?" Naruto finally understood it, making everyone, save for Artemis and the fates, to sweat drop. "So you mean that we need war, so humanity can't survive?" A tick mark appeared on his forehead. "What kind of logic is that?" He had been fighting in a war and he knew the consequences of it, especially the loss of their loved ones. "They're right, Naruto," Aphrodite said with a sigh. "You're too young to fully understand this." Alright, Naruto raised his hands into the air. "So you mean that we need a war god? Aren't Athena a war goddess herself?" "Because Athena is also the goddess of wisdom. It makes her more justice war than Ares used to be," Zeus explained. "What we need right now is a new god of war." All eyes then turned to Naruto. It didn't take him long to understand what they wanted. Wait, you mean I become the god of war?" Naruto crossed both of his arms together, making an X. "No way, I won't become a violent god. You're the one who defeated Ares," Atropos said. "You're the most potential candidate for this position. This is not a matter you can refuse, Naruto Uzumaki." "But, Clotho pulled out a small string from the basket she was holding and said, "It is about that girl standing behind you, isn't it?" Naruto widened his eyes in surprise. "Caitlin Sharp will die at the age of 24, which means 5 years from this day." Naruto turned his head around and looked at Caitlin in shock. The girl didn't look surprised at all. 5 years? That was all she got. Was this what she saw when she looked at the fates? Her final moment. "But you will have the power to lengthen and protect this string of life if you become a god, Naruto Uzumaki," Lachesis said. "Caitlin," Naruto said softly to his girlfriend, who then turned to him and smiled. "Hey, don't worry about me, Naruto," Caitlin muttered softly. "Do what you want to do, Naruto. No matter what your decision is, I will support you." Fine. Then Naruto turned back to the fates and said with a loud voice, "I will become a god." He would become the best kind of god. Naruto promised himself that. In the presence of all Olympians' council, with minor gods and goddesses standing at the side, Naruto Uzumaki stepped forward. The blonde couldn't help but glance at the side, where the main hearth was now located, where Caitlin Sharp, his girlfriend, was standing next to the goddess of the family Hestia. He saw her smile at him, and couldn't help but smile back himself. Ares' throne was removed, and with the hands of his brother, Hephaestus, it was replaced by a new throne, which would change after Naruto had become a god and his domain was decided. Naruto Uzumaki. Zeus blew powerfully, standing up from his throne with the Master Bolt in his hand. "My son, the hero of the Fourth Great Shinobi War, the one who united elemental nations together, the Prince of Olympus, you have proved to be worthy of the position of an immortal, becoming an Olympian yourself, earning the most generous gift a king of god like myself could offer. Do you accept this gift?" "Yes, Father," Naruto said with a strong and powerful voice. "Any objection?" Zeus thundered, looking around the throne room, and saw no hand. "Good, then I, as the king of Olympus, bestow this gift to you." Zeus raised his Master Bolt and shot a massive bolt into the sky, as he and the rest of the council stood from their thrones, as they all began to chant in ancient Greek. Naruto began to glow with a bright golden light with a mixture of orange in it, until the chanting stopped. A flash appeared behind him as the three fates stood in the middle of the room. All hail Lord Naruto, Prince of Olympus, Olympian god of war, heroes, nature, and loyalty. The fates said in unison. As soon as they finished, Naruto's throne changed, became a more warlike throne with small leaves around it, and a nine-tails fox standing behind a kunai emblem planted on top of it. Naruto, Hera smiled softly at him. Welcome to the family, my son. Thanks, Mom. Naruto smiled. How do you feel, Naruto? Zeus asked. Like I can do anything, Naruto grinned. The last time he got the feeling like this, it was from receiving the six-path senjutsu from Rikido Sennin. Who could have thought the feeling of becoming a god could be so familiar? Now, we need to decide what to do to Ares' children, as he is no longer an Olympians. I will take care of them, Dad. Naruto spoke up. Just think of me as their patron or something like that. Are you sure, Naruto? Zeus asked with a concerned tone. They're not your children. I'm sure, Dad. Naruto nodded his head. Plus, I doubt that I will ever have a demigod anyway. This made Hera smile brightly at him. Good, what about your sacred animal? Fox, of course, Naruto cried out loudly, making Kurama, who was watching inside of his body, chuckled. Alright, Zeus chuckled. You're also the god of nature. Maybe this will also be a solution for Pan, who is still missing. Zeus then looked around. Now, let's party to the fullest. Welcome the Prince of Olympus. Epilogue. Naruto rolled to the side to avoid the celestial bronze blade being thrust towards his chest. Naruto pushed back with a grin using the flat board of his kunai, but could have thought that he could be pushed into the defensive line. Naruto raised his weapon to block yet another strike, but spun to his left instead, and raised his tri-prongs kunai to the back of his opponent's neck. Yield? Naruto asked sternly. His opponent sighed. Fine, Naruto, you win. For real? Naruto asked. As far as he could tell, his opponent was absolutely stubborn. It would take more than that to make Aphrodite yield. The goddess's eyes narrowed as she spun, and kicked Naruto's legs out from under him. Naruto landed roughly on his back, eliciting a loud groan from the immortal demigod. Boy, that was cheap. Naruto shouted and rolled to the side to avoid Aphrodite blade. Aphrodite replied with an amused smirk when Naruto stood up. I don't play fair, remember? She spun around and kicked Naruto, who easily stopped her by grabbing her ankle. Because of the teacher? Naruto asked teasingly. Oh yes, the love goddess grinned. Because of the teacher, and she charged at her lover once again. Don't you think so, Kurama? The love goddess asked the gigantic nine-tails fox who was lying on the ground with nymphs and naiads brushing his tails and his fur beside them, a satisfied expression on his face. Sure, Kurama replied. You turn out to be more like the brat than I thought. Damn right annoying. I'm not annoying. Naruto defended himself, right Kate? Naruto asked his mortal lover, who was leaning her back against Kurama's right arm, trying to write a song herself. Oh, of course not, Caitlin said with a smile, but maybe a little. Haha, see? Kurama roared out in laughter. His life as a god couldn't get any better than this. Sure, he was busy all day with the duties of the god of war, heroes, nature, and loyalty, but he tried to spend most of his free time around his lovers, both mortal and immortal. Naruto could never think that Aphrodite and Caitlin could get along with each other all too well, as they both got no problem in sharing the man they loved. His mother, of course, didn't feel happy about this. His father, however, supported Naruto with a proud smile on his face. The gods were very jealous of him, which, Naruto couldn't blame them at all. He didn't get to become a Hokage, but becoming a god was close enough. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the other videos that I have created, and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.